Hello, everyone. Thank you. We appreciate everyone here, and please feel welcome to our session. Good afternoon. My name is Sergio. Welcome to the Cycle for Entrepreneurs, a 10-session program that addresses all aspects of entrepreneurship. I take this opportunity to extend a cordial greeting to all of those who are joining for the first time, and especially to those who are seeing this cycle from different parts of the world. As you know, the Cycle for Entrepreneurs is an initiative promoted by the Alumni Association, a project of the school that offers 5 large areas of service for students and alumni in training and knowledge, professional development, networking, benefits, and discounts. Operations in a startup, Organized Chaos, is the 6th module of the cycle, and we will focus on the operational management of a startup, on the daily management tools, and on Kanban and Scrum methodologies. To talk about this topic, we have the presence of Álvaro Cuesta.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Álvaro is the co-founder of Sonar Ventures, the first Spanish startup producer. It is a company that is dedicated to advise, accompany, and launch new projects, proven success in the international field. Álvaro is also a consultant and expositor in different companies and institutions in topics of digital strategy and entrepreneurship. Also, he was president of the Young Entrepreneurs Association of Madrid and the Young Council CEIM. Before giving the word to Álvaro, I invite you to participate in the session and ask for questions through Twitter using the hashtag that appears on the screen, which is, do we have the...
I'm not sure. EAE
well, you will have it
somewhere
somewhere here on the...
it should be on the screen, right?
Okay. So again... Okay, so again, welcome and Álvaro.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you, all of you that are behind the camera and at your house, your workplace, driving and listening at the audio books or audio sessions that you also have. As Sergio mentioned, today is the 6th session, and we're going to talk about something that, at the beginning might not seem very sexy in terms of, entrepreneurship. It's not as emotional or as, fancy as other topics. It's operations. It sounds like, like something really boring or dull. And my challenge today is actually to prove you quite the contrary, that it could be something even fun, okay? And certainly very, very important towards the success of your startup. It's something that sometimes we take it for granted. We take as like, okay, we'll have operations. We either hire a COO and manage that as something to to delegate, or we just will assume that the operation is an internal part of the company, but we'll not pay real attention to what kind of operations we want to have, how do we want to consolidate those operations, and to really prepare for the growth of our company. Let me tell you that apart from people, timing, the idea itself, and the cash flow management, operations is one of the main aspects or parameters that you should take into account in terms of the success or failure of a company. And that's for a very logical reason. As you know, startup, and we've already gone through that, is an internal or temporary organization. After that, it's no longer a startup, with a lot of uncertainty, first of all, and a lot of scalability in search of a viable business model. Okay, so in search of a viable business model, we've already covered that: customer discovery, customer development, lean startup, and other methodologies. But we haven't discussed about scalability. Scalability is one of the main aspects of a company, of a startup company. Otherwise, it would be an organic company, like a normal, traditional company, like a restaurant or whatever, that it can grow very fast, but not at a scalable way. Now, what happens if we want to change, our organization from, a certain size of business and operations, and in a very short time to scale that company in a very short period of time? Well, then the key aspect, apart from other cultural aspects and like the team, like the adaptation to change and everything, is certainly operations. So, the companies that I've seen throughout my experience in my own companies that were well prepared for growth were the ones that actually not just made it through the product market fit stage, but also which survived to that stage. Because sometimes we wish so much to grow, we wish so much to start selling and to grow in users and customers. We idealize it so much that we don't prepare for such growth, and that can also kill us. So we will try to see different tools, methodologies, and also paradigms of organization, of operations. We will try to focus at the end of the conversation on two new methodologies that probably most of you haven't heard of, and that I have implemented at my company, for example, actually at two of my companies in the past 6 months, 6 to 8 months, and that are being very successful, and I'd like to share them with you because I think it's something worth to know. One of them is OKRs. We will see that at the end. It's objectives and key results, and the other is Allacracy. That is a management system. Well, we will see all the different methodologies. And as you may also conclude after listening to this workshop, the methodology has also an impact on the culture. It's not the culture that has an impact on the methodology, but it's also the contrary. Depending on how well you define your operations and your management process, your management systems, the way you track your KPIs, the way you define your KPIs, the way you manage your information, your communications, your workflow, even your numbers, your financials. The way you do that not only conditions your future growth, but also the essence of your company, your own soul. Okay, basically. It has an impact on your own DNA as an entrepreneur. Okay, so as I was telling you before we started, you're more than welcome, and not just welcome. I beg you to interrupt me at any time. Just have any opinion, clarify anything, or just we can discuss about anything, because I'm sure that talking about operations for 1 hour and a half without interruptions, it's certainly a challenge for all of you. So I'll do my part, but I beg you to do your part, and also whoever is listening at this point and is lucky enough to see it live and have the ability, the opportunity to interact and have questions, I really ask you to do so. Okay, so show your entrepreneurial spirit and participate. Okay. Okay, so having said that, I also wanted, since it's been quite a long since our last workshop, it's been Christmas in the middle, I'd like to just quick summarize what we've seen so far, just to see where we are and the perspective of the whole program or set of workshops that we've defined. We're seeing operations, 6th session, but we've basically tried to understand the different aspects, methodologies and experiences and things to consider in order to become successful entrepreneurs. And by successful entrepreneurs, of course, we don't mean to make a lot of money, make a lot of sales, or make a lot of profit. Of course, that is nice to have, and it's something that should come eventually. But our own terms of success is basically do what we feel passionate about, do it with the right people, the right way, having fun in the meantime. At the same time, we're suffering and we are aware of the pains and the challenges and in between, using the methodologies that will lower the risk for us and for our environment and our people, and considering basically all the different best practices and dimensions in order to build that startup. We've seen the golden circle, the why, how, what. The how we should start the companies, from the purpose itself, from the why do we want to become entrepreneurs, what is it that we want to change, what is the problem and what motivates us, and essentially what will keep us going when things seem that we should give up. So we need to have and clarify very well this aspect, this why, this purpose. This purpose will also give us the perseverance and the resilience that we will need in the longer run. That of course at the beginning it's all happy and it's all fun and it's all passion, but in the long run you need to be attached to a very powerful why. Then we've seen the how and then the what. The how have we seen the how? Well, we've covered the methodologies on customer discovery and customer development, how important was to have the customer in mind, how important was to have a problem very well detected, and then have the scientific mindset in order to apply certain methodologies such as lean startup in order to validate hypotheses to see if the problem we thought we found was a real problem, and the way we thought of the problem, the scope, and in all the context of the problem, if the people that we thought had that problem were actually those people, and actually get to know them in order to develop a product, and then develop an MVP on top of it to start experimenting, exactly, to prove your main hypothesis, and then keep growing from there on iterations and certain, maybe pivoting and many other aspects that we're not going to repeat again. So that was the methodology. Also, we've talked about the people and the culture, how important it was, and why we thought culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's one of the books that I was mentioning from Peter Drucker, I think it was. And how important culture was and to define our own DNA, and how it was a very powerful predictor of our success. And then we've seen different aspects on how to grow and how to start trying to get to what is called the product market fit, when the product and the market fall in love, and it all flows somehow, and somehow that you validated the problem, you thought of a solution, you validated that solution for a specific customer segment, and then you started growing because you had a business model on top of it that was actually the right one in order to create value. Okay, so let's assume that we all have we're all set, and at the same time let's assume that in that context we are an ongoing company, a running company, and we need to define our operations. Well, we will consider operations for a startup that just basically has very few months of existence per se, and in that way there is one key concept that we should take into account in order to assume and take care of our operations, which is bootstrapping. Basically, bootstrapping is a mindset, is a way to see things, is a way to do things in a company, not just for the initial stages, but for the most part, which is basically starting your own company with no external financing, and basically since you have so little resources, and so many things to validate, so many things to do, that sometimes you end up being like the guy in the picture, trying to learn and do so many things at the same time. So in order to do that, it's if you do it without a structure, without the right operational mindset, then it's a mess. It's a disaster. It's a complete chaos. And I think life is chaotic enough. The life of startup is chaotic is not enough. You have enough uncertainty. So at least let's reduce it with our operational approach and our management systems. Okay. So one of the first advices I would give you when you start a company, and you should take into account when you take care of the operations, is outsourcing. There's so many tools out there. Here you have basically two main ones: Odesk, that it could be Odesk or Elance, they have different names, or freelancer.com. Or I recommend you another one that is, it's really resourceful and very useful sometimes. It's called Fiverr, Fiverr. Okay, it's really good because you will find thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people willing to do many tasks of your company for less than €5. So imagine the power you have in order to do that. Now, why do I mention outsourcing in an operational workshop? Because if outsourcing is essential towards the initial steps of a company, then once again, we need to integrate this outsourcing into our operations, into our management systems. That's why whatever management system we set, we need to know that most of the time we'll need to be remote. Even if we are two people, and even if we start a company with our wife or our husband and we share the same place and we see each other anytime we want, my first recommendation is do things, first outsource whatever you can afford and it is not core business. And of course, prepare your company in terms of operations with a mindset of remote first. You know, you've heard probably a few times the term mobile first, as when you want to develop a website and you say, oh yeah, I've done it mobile first, which means that you need to first design the website for, to be seen on a device like this, and then do it on a desktop. Well, my recommendation is to create a company that is called remote first, in terms of that is prepared to work remotely, even though there is just one person. Okay?
In what sense? As in outsourcing operations. So if you start getting a lot of work, a lot of jobs or whatever, then you can outsource and being one.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah, in that way, and also in the sense that all the processes that are integrated in your company, all the communications, all the decision making, all the KPIs, everything should be remote. It should be in the cloud. It should be remotely accessible, and it should be accessible by whoever needs to have access to that specific information or to take place on that decision. We will see some tools that probably some of you already know, some others don't, like Trello. Trello is a project management platform that basically is a application of what I'm just saying. Basically whatever you start doing, just do it remotely, so that if you outsource something through Freelancer, Odesk, or Fiverr, or whatever other platform of young professionals, or just your cousin or whoever works with you can interact with you remotely. So the operations take place not on the workplace but in the cloud. So first recommendation. I don't know, is that clear?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Good. So bootstrapping. Imagine this is a picture of an early blackboard of Sonar Ventures, my venture builder, the company I founded. And as you see, this is not Photoshop. We integrated at the end the word bootstrapping. It was completely embedded into our culture. I mean, it was not just so much about whatever Spanish terms you see here, like continuous learning, humble, passion, whatever. Bootstrapping was at the core of it, which means that doing things with low resources, very few people, and integrated in a very efficient way. Okay, so it was part of the of the DNA of the company, once again, as I was mentioning. Now, what happens through the growth stages? The problem is that most of the time we adapt our operations when it's too late. So the second, let's say, piece of advice, if you allow me to talk about advice, I'm just talking about from experience, not in theory, or not dogmatizing or anything. Apart from being a remote first company, you should try to run your company. This might seem counterintuitive, okay? But you should probably run your operations as if you were already a blue chip company, like a big company, in terms of if you had to be prepared for going from 3 people to 100 in 2 months. Okay. You should have always in mind that whenever you start, and at the same time, your product does not need to be scalable, which is counterintuitive. Most people would say, no, I'm going to build a scalable product and then I will adapt my operations.
Okay.
But as for example, one day Ben Horowitz, one of the main investors in Silicon Valley, he said, he wrote actually a book with that name. It's called Build Things That Don't Scale. Okay. Why is that? Why should you build something that does not scale? Well, because you still have a lot to learn. So when you build things to scale,
yes,
basically you know what's coming ahead. You know what the clients will want. You know what the customer will ask for. You will have that in mind. And the truth is that at the beginning, you cannot know that. I mean, and the more you do that with scalability in mind, I think it will probably restrain you from flexibility in terms of readapting your product to whatever the market is demanding. That, if any developer or IT person is listening and say, oh, you're saying something very stupid, why? I mean, it's better to build things very well built from the beginning. Yes and no. Yes, in terms of, for example, openness. I don't want to get too technical, but whatever you build, you can do it from an API first approach, which means whatever I build, whatever unscalable product I build, it should be open, which means that every third party or anything I want to interconnect my product with should be very easy to develop on top of it and to access and to have everything well documented. That is one thing, to make an open or API first product. But scalability, of course, it's good to have it in mind. I mean, you don't have to go against the scalability, but just think of Facebook, for example. They had to rewrite the code. I think it was after 2 years of developing because it was crappy. It was like, it was on PHP, it was terrible, it was not very well structured. And he said, it was Mark Zuckerberg that said, if we had done it the right way, we never would have reached where we reached at the speed we needed to build, because in the end we were building different things, as the market was telling us.
Yeah, you're seeing what is working in the market and then going one way or another.
Exactly.
Right? Until you get the what would be the final
exactly
piece, and then you scale.
Exactly.
Okay,
Once you reach the product market fit, once you reach, somehow the at least the minimum. Not the MVP, but the minimum value proposition or the minimum product that that is somehow stable per se, then might be the time to rewrite your code. But once again, I don't want to make a universal affirmation. It always depends on the case. But let me give you one example. For example, last 2 startups I funded, it was Food in the Box and Gremio, or Lira.com. Both of them, we started them in using WordPress and Shopify as e-commerce platform or CMS platforms. Why? Well, it was not scalable because, in the end, we knew it was not going to be enough to build what we needed to build, but it was good enough in order to validate our assumptions, to start growing, to really have clients and make money, and then we knew exactly what the client was needing. So therefore, when we started our IT from scratch, it was much better. If, of course, you are IT founders, then you don't have to sacrifice scalability as much, because you can do things in such a flexible way that it's not a trade-off. You're not sacrificing scalability through that. Now, that's in terms of product development, which of course also affects operations. But in terms of operations themselves, you should build things that scale. I mean, you should have operations that scale. That's why I was saying that it's counterintuitive, because if I ask you on a multiple choice question, out of the theory, which one should be scalable and non-scalable, you probably would get it wrong, from my idea. Why is it good and important to build things that scale in terms of operations? Well, because growth happens in a very unpredictable manner, and sometimes I can give you examples. I was in one of the companies. We went from 3 orders per day up to 600 per day, and within 2 weeks. And it was just because we got a huge corporation buying from us, and we didn't expect that growth that soon. And thanks to the operations we had set up before, we were able to assume the demand that was coming unexpectedly. If we hadn't built our operations without scalability, first of all, that corporation wouldn't have worked with us, because we would not be able to integrate with them. But at the same time, even if we could have worked, we wouldn't have delivered. So keep that in mind. When you are building a startup, you're building something that might seem small, might seem very fragile sometimes, like it's like a capsule that is trying to find its way, but all of a sudden it gets like in a tube of steam, and it's rocket. Yeah, exactly. So you need to be prepared for that, okay, for both, to be able to manage an uncertainty, agility, and low resources, and then high speed growth. So that's why operations are so important. And maybe it might seem stupid, but even just with that idea in mind, I would be happy if you actually integrated that, and I would be more than satisfied for the whole workshop if I just planted on you the idea of how important the operations are, and the management systems are, and the tools you have, because they condition your growth, your culture, and therefore your ability to survive when things get as you intend in the first place, which is basically to grow, right? Now, when I talk about operations in the growth stages, it's actually a mistake from my side. It's not stages, it is not operations for the growth stages. It's the operations we need to set during the initial phase in order to assume them in the growth stages. So, which means that the more you document processes, for example, is a very important thing. Sometimes you sacrifice that because you think it's not urgent, and you have so many priorities on your daily basis.
And it's probably the most urgent part.
Absolutely.
To get the process.
Absolutely. If you don't have the process when you grow, and you need to, let's say, hire 30 people, 10 people in 1 month, you don't have time to train them. You don't have time to see and define the processes as you grow in a very, unexpected way. No, you need to have them as defined as possible. Okay, as flexible as possible, but as defined as possible.
From the beginning.
Absolutely.
And I assume that on the way, you have to do, you will have to do different changes to the processes, but
exactly.
The foundations. Okay, I see. Interesting.
Exactly. So the more you document those processes, or the more you define them, sometimes it's not about documentation. Sometimes it's about definition of the processes, and the definition sometimes doesn't need to be documented, because it's the tool itself that gives it's self-documented, it's self-explanatory. Let me give you an example. If I use a tool that I will show you now in a few minutes that defines the process, I'll give you a very real example. Okay, a real example would be Food in the Box. One of the startups that we have started, we have founded, is a meal kit company. Most of you, I hope. I hope because you listen to me, not because we are so famous. And that meal kit company, what we do is we ship meal kits, boxes, with fresh ingredients, with the right and exact portions, and the recipe card, so you can prepare your own meal, and that we adapt it to your nutritional needs, or whatever tastes or restrictions that you might have. Okay, so that's what we do. Imagine that that we need to go from a company that is shipping 3 meal kits per day to like Blue Apron in the US that is shipping 4 million boxes per week, okay, per week. So imagine if that is a scalability challenge. Now, one of the main things that you might have not thought of, because I hadn't at the beginning, is how complex the actual recipe creation was. Because sometimes we see recipes like, okay, yes, you're selling boxes with food and recipes on top. Okay, but those recipes, I'm sure you can find them anywhere, any blog, anything. And yes and no. Of course, there are millions of recipes out there. But imagine that each and every client, if there's any missing part, any ambiguous concept, anything that is not exactly or perfectly accurate, well, when you read it in a blog, you just make a comment, or you just readjust, or you just make a mistake, and that's it. But if we do so, we lost our client. Yeah. And probably that client cost a lot of money and a lot of effort to acquire. So we cannot afford to have any inconsistency on the process of ideation and publishing of a recipe card, okay? And believe it or not, there are more than, I would say, 50 to 60 small tasks or processes on the way from the moment I want to publish a chili with meat and the moment I actually publish it, okay? That involves photographers, nutritionists, that involves to have the operational backup to see the sizes of the ingredients. I mean, so many stakeholders and so many parts together that need to interact. So what we do is we apply Kanban methodology. We will see that in the, after. And we use Trello for that. And basically, we take each recipe card and we move, once we finish our task for that recipe, let's say I'm the designer or I'm the photographer and I took the pictures already, well, I move the card of the recipe to the next stage, and then the next person in charge of that recipe, of that specific process, deals with that, okay? That might seem obvious, but that is the whole document processing and the whole process definition. Maybe if we just did it at the beginning for, let's say, 30 recipes, it would not be worth to create such a, meticulous and powerful process and reliable process, because it took a long time to define. And we could just do it ourselves in a Word document and see what happens, and make corrections, and that's it. But it would not be scalable. Let's say now that a big company is asking sometimes to develop 48 recipes in 2 weeks. How do you do that if you don't have like complete consistency as if you were an industrial company? Well, do so with your processes as if you were actually manufacturing anything, and you needed to define different processes and different tasks.
So I understand that if you scale and you have you get different nutritionists in the team, you train them to follow the process.
Yeah.
And go over the different stages.
And the process, the more self-explanatory, as I was mentioning, the better. Otherwise, it would be difficult to incorporate too many nutritionists or photographers or whatever. So that's why the tools we use need to be simple. That's why sometimes is the product that we use or the technology we use to manage our operations that defines the processes and not vice versa. Because it needs to be intuitive, it needs to be user adopted. Right? Exactly. Otherwise, people will get confused. Exactly, but not simpler, as the quote says. So that's one thing. Other is the organizational structure. It's something that is very, very, very important to define before you grow. Once again, if I had to rephrase or rename the content of the workshop today, is how to prepare for growth. That would be a better title for today's session. Basically, the organizational structure defines a lot how well you prepare for growth. If you run a hierarchical company where you have a CEO that is almighty, all powerful, and then you have a super director, and that person hires other people that depend on the person, and then those people have interns that depend on this person, and there's like a chain of
Really a large chain
exactly
of command.
exactly of a large chain of command or hierarchical structure. Then it might work for 10 people, might be okay, but once again, and it might work again for 10,000 people, because actually is the way, you know, big corporations work. So why, I mean, I'm not going to question their way of functioning, even though they are starting to question it themselves. But once again, we are special. We are not corporations, and we're not traditional companies. So we cannot apply neither the corporational structure, nor the SME, the small medium enterprise traditional approach, because organic, as you know, I have hierarchies and I start hiring, and then you know bigger departments, bigger units, and so on, because that's for an organic growth, but not for an exponential growth. You cannot hire. I remember. I wish I could tell you the name of the company because you probably know it. But I'm a very good friend and former advisor of this startup. Okay, it's a prop tech startup, and it's one of the most promising prop tech startups in the world and whatever. And they've grown so much, like you cannot believe. They've closed like 30 million euros in the last year and a half. I mean, it's just crazy. So this guy was telling me, it's like, oh, I got a problem. I got a problem because I don't know the people I'm hiring, because I just hired 50 people in 2 weeks.
It's impossible
because we need it. I mean, people invest in our company. They put it, you know, $8 million in our bank account, because they know that we need to grow fast. Otherwise, this market opportunity will miss it. And our competitors will be ahead of us. So I need to grow so much and maybe open 3 markets in 2 months. So how do I do it? Because I don't know who reports who. I don't know how to define a new structure. It's like complete chaos. And he was swimming in chaos, believe me. He was really swimming in chaos. Till he started applying these last 2 methodologies that we're going to see today, OKRs. And actually he was the one that first told me about OKRs. It was not me as an advisor who told him about the OKRs, but it was him that he read about this from Google, and some advisors in the US, in the United States, they told him to apply it. And that's when I started to learn about it. So it was quite the contrary. And he applied those methodologies, and then he closed the next round. He structured his growth. He's opening in a lot of locations at the same time, and he has a better organizational structure, not anymore a chain of command, as you were saying. Once again, keep in mind that we are different. We are special.
Startups are completely different thing.
Absolutely. A startup is a weirdo. Is something that is never been. It's an organizational structure that all the business as usual books on management haven't been able to define or predict. So we are building a new management strategy approach, new management system approach for startups, and we do that within the last 3 years. 3, 4, 5 years since customer discovery, 4 steps to epiphany, lean startup, and all these new books of management and new schools of management started. Then this holacracy, and then this reinventing organizations approach, and then these new trends and new schools that are starting to be born in order to adapt to this new entity that is nothing compared to a corporation, but needs to grow as fast as a corporation because it needs to surpass the corporation, and at the same time with the resources and size of a restaurant. you know. So
that's the challenge.
that is the challenge. So how do you do that? How do you prepare from, you know, from 3 to 300 people in 2 years? How do you do that? Well, that's considering all those things, but once again, building your operations for scalability is the only thing you need. I would, if you told me, oh, Alvaro, you know, you're so stupid, how can you say build products that don't scale? I mean, that's stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you can do it, go ahead. But in life, as I tell my daughter, 8-year-old daughter, even I'm such a geeky guy that I explain my daughter what an opportunity cost and a trade-off is. Okay, so life is all about trade-offs. It's all about trade-offs. You choose something, you say no to something else.
Opportunity cost.
It's about opportunity costs and trade-offs. Well, in terms of focus, your resources and your attention, your time and everything and your money, it's also a trade-off. In a startup, the trade-off is incredible because you have such low resources that whatever you allocate them, you know, you're taking them out from something else that is also vital, you know.
Yeah.
So the trade-offs are much higher. And what I'm saying is, if I had to choose between building scalable operations and scalable product, I would rather scalable operations and then and make sure that, you know, I do an open API first product, but with as much scalability as possible, but not sacrificing the operational scalability. I hope the message is clear. Okay, I don't want to. It's like, oh, this teacher said, you know, scalability in product is, you know, all the developers will kill me. So once again, how well we prepare for growth will define our success in those stages. So the organizational structure, we will see that, but we'll talk about it. But think of organizational structure as a system. Okay, a company is a system. It has different entities and that interact together. So that's a system. So the new paradigms of management in terms of organizational structure consider a startup or any company actually as a complex system, it's called. And complex systems, a good example of a complex system is a forest, for example. You got trees, you got plants, you got animals, you got insects, you got so many elements on that complex system that somehow is working in harmony, and there's no central authority. There's no tree in the middle of the forest that is telling the other trees and the animals and everyone what to do. And what happens?
Each element knows
what to do.
Knows what to do and has his own responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the good thing about it is that, and the good thing about complex systems as startups that manage a lot of uncertainty and chaos, because what could be more chaotic as a forest? I mean, it's so many dynamics in the meantime, you know, chemicals and I mean complexity to the maximum. And somehow they manage not just to know their own functions as an animal or as a tree that is to grow and, you know, get food from the sun and enrich the roots and keep growing. But at the same time, they know that if something affects the system, let's say the winter comes earlier than expected, somehow each and every element readapts itself to the whole environment, and the whole ecosystem readapts to the changing conditions. So people that actually analyze those complex systems, they say, well, let's do what they call biomimesis. Let's copy biology, let's copy nature, let's copy complex systems and try to adapt them to another system that is a startup. It's a company that is it's integrated by multiple parts, not just the employees. That's the old fashioned. I mean, remember I was telling you about freelancers, outsourcing, you know, people doing things all over the world for us for $5 integrated in our processes. So somehow we need to work as a forest. And it's not me that I just came crazy giving this example. Is this book called Reinventing Organizations that actually had this thesis about companies being complex systems. So that is organizational structure. You can work as a forest, or you can work, as an architect that is, having a master plan and is just building blocks. And there's this, engineer, and then there's like this whole structure because you know what's going to happen. So you can allocate the resources and the tasks and the functions, and it's the most efficient way to organize. But if you don't know what the building you're actually building,
because in the startup you don't know
exactly, because uncertainty is an essential part of it. Then you cannot expect to work the same way. So that's why it's so important. Once again, I don't want to give you just data. I want to try to change your mind in a way, or just to give you food for thought. Okay. So we will cover a bit more in depth of these systems. But let me tell you, I apply them and I'm more than happy. Okay. So third part, not just documenting and preparing for processes, not just affecting our managing our organizational structure, but also how, operations is also how do we define our strategy? How can you define a strategy that is strategical, not just tactical, but at the same time is flexible because it assumes the uncertainty of the environment and the uncertainty of the fact that we haven't found our own business model and not even the product market fit. How do we do that? Because as I think it was Winston Churchill that said, plans never work, but planning is essential. So I think that sentence defines very well what I'm trying to say. The ones that you heard me before, or you are actually were my students or whatever, that I'm against business plans in startups, okay? Because they're like a 40-page document that predicts what's going to happen in the next 3 years. And I mean, if you actually manage to, if you showed me a business plan that was written 3 years ago and actually worked, I mean, really, I will work for you, okay? But at the same time, some investors, they just ask you to do the effort to actually write the business plan, not even to follow it, because they know, as Napoleon also said, that strategy never resists the contact with the enemy. So basically, we need to find a way to have strategy, long-term vision, medium and short-term vision, but at the same time having the ability to correct the course as we move on. Imagine, and I have this graphical image when I switch to strategical mindset. Imagine you're running a car, you're driving a car, and you have a GPS. You set up your destination, okay? You know that the route today, the GPS is telling me, okay, go here, then take this road, and then this other because this one is closed. And then if we want to get faster, let's not get into the center and let's arrive there. So that's the strategy. You know where you want to head up, and you know how to get there, the tactics and all the steps. But let's say that then one street is closed and it was not updated on the GPS, Well, then you need to recalculate route. That's what the GPS does, right? Mm-hmm. So basically you need to have a GPS in your company. And the GPS is not just an orientation system. That's the global positioning system definition. But the GPS, the navigator in the car, it's connecting, it's using the location system, but it's also defining the optimal routes as you move on. And if you miss one street, remember what is Google Maps doing? Recalculating route. So you need to be able to recalculate route as you move. And that implies that if you have old-fashioned or business as usual management and organizational systems, you will not be able to recalculate route. and that will cause you death as a company. So we need to build something, embed something in our organizational, operational DNA that will allow us to do this strategic planning as flexible as possible. So for that, I recommend you another, not just the organizational, the holacracy that I was telling you about, but also the OKRs. Okay, we will see OKRs and real examples on OKRs. Objectives and key results. And I would apply OKRs combined with another methodology that is called Scrum. Some people say Scrum, whatever. SCRUM. What is this Scrum methodology? Well, it's something that is a methodology that comes from the development field, the IT development field. They were dealing with a lot of uncertainty in IT projects. They were always having problems because the client was expecting something, and actually developers were planning and defining everything and then executing the last part and at the last time of the project. But the client would not see anything until it was developed at the end of the stage. So it didn't have enough time to react in case something was not as expected or the market was not responding enough or whatever. So they needed to do something more flexible, and that's where they're called agile methodologies. They started to be developed, and one of them is Scrum. So Scrum, basically, I could give you. I mean, there are certifications on Scrum, so I could talk for hours about that. But to sum it up, sorry, I think I lost. To sum it up, it's based on two main time sequences. Okay, first, the daily sprints, which is stand-up 15-minute meetings with all members of the team, physical or remotely. Then weekly sprints, or as the duration you want to define. If you want to say that you want to have sprints of 2 weeks, then it's fine. Some people do it. Some others use 3 weeks. Some others just 1 week. But it's about you define the very short-term goals every 2 weeks. So imagine that, because reality sometimes changes so much in 2 weeks. So why plan for 3 years ahead if you don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks? So that's why it's very good to redefine, to recalculate the route every 2 weeks and have a meeting with a certain structure. I recommend you to read about Scrum, and those 2 weeks then are divided by daily sprints, are very short 15-minute meetings where just to people so that people can help each other and resolve whatever issues or problems or challenges they found on the way in order to reach that goal. Okay, that makes the company more agile, and that helps strategic planning much more. But that's like daily and bi-weekly per se tactical approach. But how about the strategy? Now, in terms of strategy, you probably, some of you have heard of the old system called the BSC, the Balance Scorecard. It was from Kaplan and someone else from Harvard Business School. They came out with this strategical approach to manage big corporations that SMEs started to apply as well. And basically what you had to do is every year you had to define the main objectives for each dimension. You have the learning dimension, the process dimension, the financial dimension, and the sales dimension. And for each dimension, you need to find management, the CEO that is almighty and visionary, and the committee needed to define the whole strategy based on the vision for the whole year. even for 2 years sometimes, and find like 3 to 5 objectives for each dimension. And then for each objective you need to find certain initiatives to take place, and for each initiative you will need to find certain KPIs, ways to measure the results of that, and you would review that every year or every 2 years. Now, if I did that in my companies, I would be dead, honestly, because apart from the bureaucracy behind it, it's assuming two things that are not according to the startup way of functioning, or the actual world way of functioning. Maybe even 10 years ago was okay, before Facebook, before Uber, before Airbnb, but now things are moving way too fast. It was assuming that CEOs are all visionary and mighty, and just people have to execute whatever the CEOs and the management team knows, which is against any commitment with the company. It's against any bottom-up approach of strategy. It's also assuming that the strategy cannot change within a year, and that used to be okay for big corporations, even for 2-3 years, but not for startups. They change every quarter. And also that you will need to find so many indicators, that in the end you're measuring indicators all the time, and you don't know actually what you're actually measuring, right? And people don't get engaged, don't get committed with those indicators, and also was aligning the accomplishment of those indicators with the wage, the paying system, the remuneration, your objectives, and the way your bonuses were calculated or whatever. And the OKR system, the objectives and key results system, changed completely this approach. It was one of the main ideators of this methodology. He was Peter Drucker. He was working at Intel, and he applied this methodology very successfully. Then he went to Google, and then Google started to apply OKR system, and still applies those systems, and it allows Google to work as a startup, which is incredible. I mean, a huge corporation working as a startup, more agile than most companies that are like 10 people size. So that's when OKRs are starting to become popular. Okay. And the essence of OKRs, we will see more concrete. We are trying to converge little by little, but just to give you a glance of how important the strategic planning approach that you have is very, very important. Just have daily meetings, weekly sprints, quarterly goals, and maybe general yearly objectives at the service of a vision. Okay, the mission and all that. I mean, I think it's a bit old-fashioned approach. This vision, mission. I think it's very typical, and of course you need to define your values. That's a whole new story it's a new workshop. I'm not going to talk about it, but of course it all comes up to your why, your purpose. Okay, whatever you want to accomplish, and that includes your values and the way you envision the future, which is of course very important. And so the last pillar, the last aspect of building and preparing for growth is a specialization. So each area of functioning should have its own management systems in order to be able to scale on these areas, as you were saying. So Kanban methodology. I'm not going to get too specific because I'm giving you too many concepts, and I don't want to to make you confuse, to have a confusing effect on this session. Once again, just stick to the main 2-3 ideas about growth and operations. and how important are the management principles, the organizational structure, the tools we use, and the mindset we have. Okay, but if we apply Kanban methodology, that will help us to have a consistency on operations or reliability, efficiency, and at the same time in a very simple way to manage. Kanban was a very simple system that came in Japan from the industrial era and was ensuring quality versus speed. So basically you would not go to the next stage without certain let's say aspects ensured. Okay, we'll see that with the functioning of Trello. The reduction of waste, I don't want to get too much into it. Continuous improvement, which is also called Kaizen, another Japanese principle. That is something that you work in a sequence of processes, so you don't go to the next one until you ensure that the previous one is perfect. But at the same time, you make small modifications to your processes and to your product, very, very small, not major releases. And if you look back, that your processes and your product might have changed a lot. And of course, flexibility. It's all about flexibility. So the steps to define Kanban, I think if I told you that, I would get too deep into it, and I'd rather talk to you about OKRs and Holacracy. But this is a real example of an application of a tool that is called Trello, Trello, how you will see that after. And that is it's also a very good example because the title is called Sprints Food in the Box. I don't know if you see in the top left, you see that Sprints Food in the Box. That was the Trello, the board in Trello that we were using, the whole team. I don't know if you see a lot of faces there and squares in each card. You would see each member of the team that had assigned that card. Okay, so you would have a management tool, Trello, a management system that would be Scrum or Scrum, Agile systems, that we would define weekly meetings in this case, weekly sprints. So every Monday we would have a sprint and a weekly meeting, and then we would use Kanban as a way to define the different stages of a certain process that cannot be easily seen in this case. But imagine I take each and every card from here. It was called from logistics, operations, talent, whatever, and you see there a column that is called sprint. Okay, sprint has different cards. For example, I don't know. It's funny. You see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th, it's called alcohol license. Okay, we wanted to sell alcohol through the website. So one of the objectives of that week was to sell alcohol, to be able to have the license in order to sell beer or wine. Okay, so that was as part of the decision that we all made as a team, and some people were working from Cambridge, actually, from Oxford, others in Madrid, others in other countries, and we were all working at the same time. And whoever was owner of each and every of each card would move the card. It would just drag it. It's a free tool, by the way. I recommend it to you in case you haven't used it. Another free tool like this that is very powerful and could also help you, it's called Asana. Asana, Asana, as the yoga postures. So the person would move. If let's assume you take the last the first task that is for you, you move it to doing. So this is called a visual management tool. Basically, you can manage the company and have a very good visual perspective of what is happening at this point at the company. This is like an instant picture of what's actually happening.
And what stage of the
exactly
process we are.
so you can see what is on sprint, what has not been already decided to start with, which is everything that is to the left of the sprint column, or whatever is to the right of the column sprint, which is doing. It's anything we're working on at this moment. You would see there revisar, which is review, which means that sometimes instead of this chain of command, it's something like, okay, I've done whatever I was supposed to, but I need 2 people to check on whatever things need to be checked. I move it to review, and I just send a message on this card to the other people, and they will know that they need to review it. And whenever it's done, you just move it to the column done. So each and every week you do a retrospective, what it's called. Then you analyze whatever has been done, whatever has not been done, and the new objectives of the next sprint.
Of the following week?
Of the following week.
I see.
So that's, as you can see, it's a tangible way to try to explain you how operations interact here. I mean, this is one board that I use on Trello just to manage the weekly sprints. But then I have, and I can also, the good thing is I can actually see it from here. In Food in the Box, I have already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 boards that manage different aspects of Food in the Box. So, for example, I use one that is called culture, and what I have is different columns like the ones that you are seeing there, but they have different stages, which is the first one that is called inbox, where each and every employee can write whatever suggestion that they want to implement in the company. Mm-hmm. Like we want to have organic fruits for free in the company for the team, for example. So they put it here, and the person in charge, or the circle, we'll talk about that after, the circle in charge of culture and team will evaluate it and will drag it to the next column that will say not yet, which means it's not a definite no, but it's we cannot afford it at this point, or can send it to do, which means it's something that needs to be implemented because we've accepted to integrate it as a new cultural thing.
And they assign a person to each.
Exactly. Uh-huh. Or we can send it to doing or to done, and you can see different things that we have integrated into our culture just because they've been into a structure. Imagine that you are 100 people and you need to to decide whatever I have here. For example, one person suggested create a library for Food in the Box, which means that we all send books, put in the shelters, and we all share the same books and we can read whenever we want. That's a suggestion. Okay, how do you manage that when you're 100 people? You go to the HR department and you make a suggestion, and the person evaluates that suggestion and decides it. That's the old-fashioned way. Here you suggest it, people can actually vote on it, they can make comments on it on a remote basis. Then the person with the right ownership on that field can actually decide whether to integrate it or not, and then you can have a visual knowledge of whether that is being implemented or has already been implemented, or it's got stuck because we got any problem. Okay, so that visual management system, I really recommend it to you. So Scrum Methodology, once again, I don't want to get too deep because we got 15 more minutes, but just to give you an insight, it's very important to take into account when you deal with Scrum that one of the main contributions of Scrum, apart from the agility of the meetings and the structure, it's what it's called distributed authority. Okay, which means that before it was like this project manager and the client, and the project manager would define and choose whatever. Whoever he or she would have the whole team depending on that person, and it will be a hierarchical process. With Scrum, this distributed authority means that as Scrum Master, I have certain authority on certain issues, which means to ensure that the meetings are held in the right way, the right time. Okay. Ensure that each and every card that I was showing you before, it's very well written and documented, that the meetings are well conducted, that, you know...
Would this role be substituting the COO?
Not exactly, because the Scrum Master is just a person for the meetings and the what is called the governance. Okay. It could be similar. No, exactly. It's not exactly as a COO, but it does some tasks that are part of a COO. Because a COO could be also a product owner. So it's like a deconstruction of a COO, right? What is the product owner? Is the person in charge of, you know, taking the big decisions. You know, it's like the, you know, let's say the equivalent to a CEO per se in a small project. Okay. Then you got the Scrum Team, which is not just the people from a very specific area, but in a Scrum project, all the members are involved and need to be present in the sprint meetings. So basically, you need to integrate the designer, the programmers, the client, the suppliers. All of them, they should be present on these weekly or bi-weekly meetings, because otherwise it will be a miscoordination. So the information should be horizontal, and we should all have access to the information at the same time and have the right to give an opinion and be informed, and that, you know, so that the final decision should be at least having had in consideration the opinion of each and every member of the project. This is a very good picture of how it works. You can I'm sorry it's in Spanish because it was from a Spanish class that I had to readapt. That's why you see the title up there, La Metodología Scrum. I forgot to translate, I'm sorry. So there you can see the product owner. Then you can see the 1 to 4 weeks that is called the sprint. Okay. Then the Scrum Master, as you see up there, is just making sure that the methodology is applied. And the client and the potential product and all the stakeholders and the methodology. I recommend you to check and to read more about Scrum methodology. Okay. Now OKRs and Holacracy. We are almost at the end of the session. Once again, I'm not going to, I already told you what is OKRs, objectives and key results, the background and basically how important it is. Imagine how important it is to me, the OKRs, that I apply it in my personal life. You know, let me give you an example. It's okay. Let me give you an example. Sorry, I just I need to plug it in. I'm not sure if I will be able to, but it's okay. I know the presentation by heart. So imagine how many of you have defined your objectives for 2018. After Christmas, you know, new year, new life. I want to go to do sports and read whatever books and start, you know, I don't know, doing this hobby that I always wanted. And you know, so we think of the 2018 as our strategic planning at a personal level, right? And we define it and we review it at the end of the year, as if our life is not going to change in 1 year. We're just going to apply whatever we define the first week of January. Did you know that 95% of New Year's resolutions are not fulfilled or accomplished? Well, that happens with our companies as well, with the strategic objectives. That's why I apply what I call the personal OKRs. So I have of course, a general. First, I have a life mission statement, as if it was my vision. I know what I want to accomplish, like a life manifesto, right? What I want to do, for society, for my people, for myself, for the world, for whatever. And I have this paradigm of life. Then I say, okay, 2018, somehow I give certain principles that I'd like to take into account for this year, things that I want to make better, but nothing really, really specific. Just maybe like a strategical objectives, but very broad. Okay, nothing really that I commit to a specific thing. Like I want to, go to the gym forever and ever, and start running forever and ever. And then what I do is each and every quarter, which means from now up till the April 1st, what I do is I define 3 to 5 objectives that are aligned with this medium and long-term vision, that are somehow aspirational. I will not fulfill them completely. That's the purpose of the OKRs, as opposed to this balanced scorecard that I was referring to. And they have these objectives that are aspirational, and for each objective, that's why it's called objectives and key results, I will define 2 to 5 key results that will help me to measure whether I accomplish the objective or not. And those key results should also be somehow aspirational. The ones that define that OKR system said that if you accomplish 100%, it was because your standards, your objectives were not ambitious enough. Okay? Which is a different approach to the traditional management that is like a failure if you arrive to 70%, right? So somehow OKRs make you continuously frustrated, in a way, if you take it the wrong way, of course. So the OKR system is a very, it's not just qualitative approach, but it's a very quantitative. Each key result should be in line with this objective. So what I do is, I don't know, imagine, I want to give you an example. One of my objectives was to be a cleaner person in my house. Okay, don't tell anyone. So I wanted to have my house more organized because I arrive late and then I have no time. So I defined the objective, that it was aspirational, and then I decided, okay, what are the key results that will measure how. First, it will help me to accomplish that result, and it will be like a breakdown of the different, not tasks, they're key results, okay? So, for example, one key result for me is throwing a dinner with my friends and family, April 1st, to show them my work, what I've done in my house, which is an obsessively, meticulously cleaning and organization of my house, okay? So that is like the end goal. If I accomplish to invite my environment, my team, is also a way to commit. But it's actually a specific objective thing. It's either I do it or not. It's dichotomic. Okay, it's zero. It's binary. It's 0, 1. So another key result would be spending 300 euros on organizational materials for the house. Cupboards, boxes, cleaning products, whatever. Another key result could be, for example, applying the KonMari method, which I recommended to you. It's KonMari, KonMari. Okay, is this Japanese method to have a clean house from a Japanese woman that was called Marie Kondo. So she has this very specific method, and she's got an app where you follow the method. So my key result is to accomplish 100% of the method on my house as a way to accomplish the key result on the objective. So those I have one more, I forgot now. So those are the results, and then each week I update those the percentage of accomplishment of those key results. Okay, so I cannot see it myself, but you can probably see it. If I go to the next slide, you will see two examples of objectives and key results. You will see first, a normal random definition, and you will see an ideal or a practical application on a company. You will see the objective, you will see there, and then you will see the key results right after the objective for each of the 3 to 5 objectives. So just take a look at it, make a screenshot while I'm talking, go see this video whenever it's released on YouTube channel, and try to analyze it. But most importantly, just write down on Google OKRs and you will see whatever, it's everything there. I just tell you, I recommend you, and it's very easy to apply, and it's very useful. We do that at Food in the Box. Last week, for example, we had a kickoff, a retreat, a yearly retreat for 2018, where we had our overall objectives for 2018, but very broad, and then the whole team was defining the objectives and key results for this quarter. So we had 5 objectives. We're 10 people, we have 5 objectives and 3 key results, more or less, for each objective, basically. That's a strategical and management way to do things. And the tool to do so, I would just recommend you to use Google Spreadsheets, because it's the easiest tool. You have other tools. For example, you can see one that is called Week Done. Week as the week, the days of the week. Week Done, DONE. Weekdone.com is an OKR system that it's very easy to follow, and all the employees can follow it. Okay, so so that goes for the OKRs, and I really recommend it to you. Of course, in those meetings, we review the accomplishment of the previous OKRs. But the good thing about it is that we use the sprint meetings, the weekly meetings that we have, and each member of the company actually says and repeats the OKRs each and every week, and what is the percentage and what is the the level of accomplishment that you could find that they're actually seeing. Now the last part of the systems, it's called the Holacracy. Okay, the Holacracy, it's a management system that I will try to show you. That is based on what I was telling you on these complex systems, on this forest approach, right? So, what is the Holacracy? Basically, it's organizing your company, instead of areas, organizing your company in circles. Okay? There's actually a political party in Spain here that's called Podemos that was working somehow in an holacratic way, because they had these circles as well, and it was actually, from an operational point of view, they were brilliant. Ideologies apart, of course. So what they do is, what we do, for example, at Food in the Box or at Sonar Ventures, what we do is we define circles. Each circle integrates a specific area, and it's like a mini project. It's like a mini company inside the company. Okay? Imagine, for example, I will tell you the circles that we have in Food in the Box. We have, for example, one that is called customer happiness. That is like the super circle. Then we have small circles, that one of them is called boxers. It's not that I call it boxers, it's just the circle itself, they decided to be called boxers. And they have their own way of functioning. It's like, they have so much autonomy. And they define their own OKRs aligned with the global strategy. So, and they have their own way of working, they own their own meetings with their own style, they do whatever they want, and they work independently, as well as a tree works independently, but at the same time is connected with a major ecosystem. So each circle has, for example, two different roles. One of them is called the lead. The lead is like the CEO of the circle per se. Okay, so to make sure that the objectives are fulfilled and the people exactly they're accomplished and the people are integrated. And then you have another role that is called a facilitator. Facilitator, we don't. This is politically incorrect, so I apologize. But internally speaking, we don't call it facilitator. We call it the Führer. The Führer, because it's the person in charge of making sure that the meetings are held in time and manner. Things are not a way of scope. Mm-hmm. So it's a person that needs to be like so inflexible, intolerant, and rigid, and say, hey, I'm sorry, it's not time for this, it's not time for that, let's stick to timing, let's do that. So it's, once again, authority is distributed authority, okay? Some people have different roles, so it's funny because, let me give you examples. Out of the 8 circles that we have at Food in the Box, 3 of them are led by interns. And it's a way to show that, you know, you don't need to, it's not hierarchy. You can lead a specific area on your company, called circle, regardless of your experience, your status in the company. Is more on a voluntary approach. Sometimes it's like, okay, we need to create a circle that we call investors' happiness, because we needed to define a circle to maintain the relationship with all our investors and to extract value from them, and at the same time to try to provide them value, and also to report them accordingly, so we have them happy, so they help us in the next rounds, right? Well, and we said, why should the CEO do it? I mean, it's something that should be the whole team. So we said, okay, let's create this circle. So we suggested it, and people voluntarily signed up to be part of that circle, and we have our own way to function, to work, and their own rules, and the OKRs are defined, aligned with the main and general OKRs. So basically, in the weekly meetings, the lead of each and every circle is the one that speaks. Okay. That's the way we do. So anyway, I think we ran out of time. So I will send you. I will show you other examples that you can see there, and I think that's pretty much about it. As a sum up, as a synthesis, I hope, you know, I made something that apparently super boring as operations, at least for me before, was at least interesting. I hope I changed the paradigm on scalability and preparing for growth and how important they are, and consider operations as, you know, these management tools, these management paradigms, organizational structure, and all these considerations. This remote first approach, all this agility, this flexibility, and try to be ahead of the game. Just by applying OKRs and holacracy, perhaps you becoming more agile, more innovative, and that will make you reach faster whatever point you need to reach. And in any case, prepare for the growth you hopefully will have. And in the worst case scenario, if you fall, I mean, it will be a structured failure, and at the same time, it will lower your chances of failure. It will increase, to put it in good perspective, it will increase your chances of success, which, once again, and to finish, is the essence of what I'm talking to you about. It's all about successful entrepreneurship, reducing risk while having fun at the same time. So thank you, and hope you found it interesting.
Okay, well, we now can have questions. If you have any questions, you can ask through the Twitter account, through the Twitter hashtag. I don't know if there's any questions, so maybe I can start asking some questions. I was wondering about the last part of the presentation in terms of the circles. What circles do you decide to create? I mean, what it could be somehow extrapolated to departments, the different departments or the different aspects in a business. So when do you decide you have to do a circle for stakeholders? I mean, for shareholders or for happiness?
It's a good question, and it's an organic answer. Let me put it this way. For the most part, it could be associated or assimilated to most of the areas in a company. For example, we have one circle that is called growth, another circle that is called I don't know. For example, we have one that is called gastroemocional, which is gastro-emotional, and it doesn't make sense by itself, but it's the name they decided to have. And basically it's like the gastro department of a meal kit business, which should be. It's like the product department, not the IT, but the product department. But product, it could be fragmented in many dimensions. It could be the IT product, the editorial product, and all those dimensions are better structured on circles. And the best thing is that I could be a member as a team. On average, the 10 people we are at Food in the Box, they belong to between 2 and 3 circles on average.
Okay.
And the good thing is that, an intern could be just a member of a circle like Investor Happiness that she didn't know anything about. She just wanted to be part of it, learn about it, and that's it. And at the same time is a member of 2 other circles, and one of them, she is the lead of that circle, which is one that we decided that for that quarter was one of the main objectives. So in order to accomplish that objective, we needed to develop that circle. So basically it's aligning the whole identity of your company, the structure, the objectives of your company, and at the same time the organizational areas of your company, that all mixed up into circles.
Okay, interesting. And well, going back to the part of the team and organizing all the processes, I wanted to ask you. Well, you say you're 9 or 10 in-house team. Do you work? How many people do you work from outside or international people in the team?
Okay. At this point, we are one person from India. From our team, no, apart from suppliers. One person works sometimes from Spain, sometimes from Argentina. And the other person 2 weeks in Cambridge and 2 weeks in Madrid. And I think at this point that's it. And then we have other suppliers and partners and stakeholders that they work from Germany and so on. And another person works from Tarifa in the south of Spain. So basically, we're not a purely remote company, but we are adapted to a remote company. Even though one of our OKRs in the previous quarter was to become a company remote first. So we had certain key results on to ensure that we could have anyone from anywhere in the world working at Food in the Box, no matter where she or he lived.
Okay, so in terms of that, do you think that you can get the same results if you have if you're in a remote team, everyone working on different parts of the world, and you have is it possible to be efficient or have the same level of efficiency when you have a remote team?
I think that you could have more efficiencies in certain aspects and less efficiencies in others. In terms of culture, you need to pay a lot of attention to culture if you want to build a remote team, because you can be sacrificed.
So is it possible to build a culture?
It is.
In a remote team?
It is. And actually, just to finish, let me give you an example. I would recommend you to check this company that is called Buffer, BUFFER.com. I think it's buffer.com, whatever. Just Google Buffer Startup, and you will see this social media company has 120 employees, I think, at this point. They apply Holacracy fully. They work on circles. Their salaries are fully transparent. You could see whatever people, and they all, each and every one, they work remotely. and they have strong culture because they have meetings and very periodically they have their own different codes. And one last tool that I recommend you that I think it was in one slide, apart from Trello and Google Apps, in order to organize your operations, I recommend Slack. Slack as a communication tool, slack.com, is a very good way also to structure your operations. Just check that. Have a tutorial on YouTube and you will see the full potential, because you will be able to integrate your communications as a team, and at the same time you can integrate Trello, you can integrate each and every tool that you're using, every workflow. In fact, their motto as a company, it says Slack where work flows, which means is workflows and work flowing. Okay, so it's a very operational platform. So Slack.com, Trello, Google Apps. With that in mind, applying all these methodologies and mindsets, you will definitely prepare for growth.
Great. So I think we're done. We run out of time. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. In the next few days, we will upload the session to the YouTube channel. And thank you again, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.